All right, we're diving deep today into a world that honestly might not sound all that exciting at first, but I promise you it's incredibly important.
Oh, absolutely. It's surprisingly fascinating once you start to really peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, we're talking about pharmaceutical regulations.
The rules and systems that make sure your medications are safe and effective.
And today, we're zeroing in on one specific regulation, the FDA's 21 CFR Part 211,
Subpart G, to be precise.
packaging and labeling control.
Exactly. It's the rule book for how pharmaceutical companies guarantee the right medication gets to the right person.
With clear, accurate information.
Information that could honestly be life-saving.
Okay, so this is about more than just preventing someone from accidentally taking the wrong pill, right?
Oh, it's way more than that. We're talking about preventing mix-ups, contamination, and making sure those labels are foolproof.
So it's not just about what's in the bottle.
It's about all those safeguards that ensure the information on the outside of the bottle is accurate.
Reliable and potentially life-saving.
Exactly. And what's so interesting is that these regulations often come from real-world events.
Sometimes even tragedies, right?
Sadly, yes. Like the Tylenol tampering incident back in 1982.
Oh, wow, right. Someone laced Tylenol capsules with cyanide?
It led to multiple deaths and just a nationwide panic.
A chilling reminder of how vulnerable our medications can be.
And that event completely revolutionized how over-the-counter drugs are packaged.
So those tamper-evident seals we see everywhere,
Those shrink bands, yeah, even the bottle designs themselves.
they're all because of that one horrible event.
It was a turning point. They're designed to give you that extra confidence that your medication hasn't been tampered with.
I had no idea. Those little seals had such a dramatic backstory.
They really do. But Subpart G covers so much more than just those obvious features.
Like what?
Well, everything from how labeling and packaging materials are stored to the very specific process of verifying those labels.
Before they even touch a bottle.
Absolutely.
So someone's actually checking every single detail to make sure it's accurate.
You bet. Imagine a huge manufacturing facility producing thousands of different medications.
The potential for mix-ups has got to be massive.
It is. So before any packaging happens, every single label goes through this really rigorous scrutiny.
So it's like comparing each label to a blueprint, making sure every word, number, even the font size is right.
That's a good way to put it. It's incredibly meticulous, but technology has made it a lot faster.
So they're using things like barcode scanners.
Definitely. And even optical character recognition systems that can compare text against the master record instantly.
Combining high-tech and human oversight to double-check.
And they're not just looking for typos or misplaced commas, they're looking for anything that could confuse a patient.
Like unclear instructions.
Or missing information about side effects. Those labels are the patient's main interface with the medication.
One wrong word could have huge consequences.
Absolutely, and the attention to detail doesn't stop there. Subpart G also mandates really strict storage procedures.
For the labels and packaging materials.
For everything. We're talking climate-controlled warehouses, clearly labeled storage areas, systems to track their movement.
It's way more than just keeping things tidy.
It's about maintaining the integrity of those materials.
Making sure there are no mix-ups, no contamination.
Or even deterioration.
So those labels and packaging materials are treated with the same care as the medications themselves.
Exactly. They're rigorously tested and validated.
It's fascinating to think about how those seemingly mundane details,
They really are the unsung heroes of patient safety.
if one link is weak, the whole chain is compromised.
And that's why companies have to put such strict controls in place at every stage.
Okay, so let's talk about those controls.
Yeah.
What are some of the things companies actually do to make sure they're meeting these standards?
Well, it goes beyond just the right equipment. It's about creating this whole culture of quality.
Where everyone understands the stakes.
Everyone from the folks on the packaging line to the warehouse managers.
It's training, procedures, maybe even a whole different mindset.
Absolutely. And companies invest a lot in training to make sure everyone understands those regulations.
And how their actions, even the smallest things, can impact patient safety.
And it's not just a one-time thing. There are ongoing trainings, audits, constantly reinforcing those principles.
So they're always looking for ways to be better.
To minimize errors, to make sure every single bottle that leaves their facility meets the highest possible standards.
This is giving me a whole new appreciation for just how much work goes into making sure those little bottles are safe.
It's a pretty amazing process, and we've only just scratched the surface here.
There's so much more to unpack.
So many fascinating details.
Well, let's keep going then. What else is there to explore in this deep dive into packaging and labeling controls?
Well, we've talked about the rules the systems companies have in place.
But what happens when those systems fail?
What are the consequences when a company doesn't meet these really stringent requirements?
That's a good question. We've seen how much emphasis there is on getting things right, but mistakes do happen.
They do, and the implications can be serious both for the company and for the patient.
Okay, now I'm really interested. Let's dive into those consequences and explore the systems in place to hold companies accountable.
Let's do it. We've been talking about all these safeguards, all these ways companies try to prevent problems.
But things can still slip through the cracks, right?
They can, unfortunately. And when they do, the consequences can be pretty significant.
Especially since we're talking about, people's health.
Exactly. The FDA has this really important responsibility to make sure that medications are safe.
And that includes making sure companies are following the rules.
Absolutely. So what happens when a company, let's say, slips up, doesn't quite follow Subpart G to letter?
Does the FDA just give them a warning? Or is it more serious than that?
It depends on the situation, but let's just say the FDA doesn't take these things lightly.
I wouldn't expect them to.
They've got a whole range of tools at their disposal when it comes to enforcement.
So walk me through those tools. What happens if they find a company isn't following the rules?
Well, one of the first things they might do is issue something called a Form 483.
Oh, 483. What's that?
It's basically a list of observations, things that the FDA investigators notice during an inspection.
So they show up at the facility, and if they see something wrong with how the company is handling packaging or labeling,
They write it up on this Form 483.
it could be anything from, like, problems with storage to issues with their label verification process.
Or incomplete documentation, inadequate training, really anything that suggests they're not meeting the requirements.
And this Form 483, it's not just like a friendly heads up, right?
No, it's a pretty serious matter. The company has to respond formally
Laying out how they plan to fix the problems.
and prevent them from happening again, of course.
And the FDA doesn't just take their word for it, right?
Not at all. They'll review those responses really carefully and might even come back for another inspection.
To make sure they actually followed through.
Exactly. So there's a real sense of accountability.
You can't just ignore a Form 483 and hope it goes away.
Definitely not. And if the FDA isn't satisfied with the company's response, they can escalate things further.
What does that look like?
Well, that's where warning letters come in.
Warning letter, that sounds a little more serious.
It is. A warning letter is a formal notification from the FDA that the company is violating regulations.
And it lays out exactly what they're doing wrong.
In detail. And here's the thing, warning letters are public.
You mean like anyone can see them?
Yep, anyone can go online and find them, and that can really damage a company's reputation.
Is it harder to do business?
So it's a pretty strong incentive to get things right the first time.
Okay, so we've got Form 483s, warning letters. What happens if a company just completely ignores the FDA?
Well, the FDA has even stronger enforcement actions they can take.
Like what?
They can seize products, actually shut down entire manufacturing facilities,
Wow.
and in some cases, they can even pursue criminal charges.
Criminal charges, that's getting into some serious territory.
It is, but that's usually reserved for the most egregious violations.
When there's a clear disregard for patient safety.
The kind of situations where someone could actually be harmed.
So the FDA really does have teeth.
They do. They're not just issuing empty threats.
Okay, so that's how they hold the companies accountable. But what about the patients who might have already received a medication that wasn't packaged or labeled correctly?
That's where product recalls come in.
Right, like we sometimes see with food or cars.
Exactly. If a company or the FDA discovers that a medication could be a risk to patients because of some problem with the packaging or labeling,
They issue a recall to get it off the market.
to protect people from potential harm.
So how does that work? Do they just send everyone an email saying, hey, if you have this medication, send it back?
It's a bit more involved than that. There are actually different classes of recalls.
Depending on how serious the problem is.
Right. A class I recall is the most urgent. That's when there's a reasonable chance that the medication could cause serious health problems or even death.
That's scary.
So in a class I recall, they pull out all the stops.
Press releases, notifications to distributors, even working with doctors to reach patients directly.
It's a huge effort to get that medication out of circulation as quickly as possible.
Can minimize the risk.
Exactly.
So we've got these different levels of enforcement, from those initial Form 483s all the way up to product recalls And even criminal charges.
It's a multi-layered approach to really trying to ensure patient safety.
And it sounds like it's not just about punishing companies after they make a mistake.
Right. The FDA also spends a lot of time working with companies proactively.
Helping them understand the regulations and how to implement them properly.
They offer guidance documents, workshops, even individual consultations.
So it's not just about catching them doing something wrong.
It's about trying to help them get it right from the start.
Which ultimately benefits everyone.
Especially the patients.
This whole conversation has been really eye-opening. I'm starting to see just how much goes into making sure those medications are safe.
It's a complex system, for sure, but it's all designed with the patient in mind.
So for the average person listening to this, what's the main takeaway? What should they be thinking about the next time they pick up a prescription?
I think the biggest thing is just awareness. Knowing that these regulations exist, that there are people working hard behind the scenes to protect them.
And that they have a role to play in their own safety too, right?
Absolutely. Being an informed consumer is so important. Paying attention to those labels, reading the instructions carefully.
If something seems off, asking questions.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to talk to your doctor or your pharmacist. Check those seals, look for expiration dates, trust your instincts.
Be your own advocate.
Because ultimately, you are the one who's taking that medication.
It's your health on the line.
And knowledge is power. The more you understand about these systems, the more you can advocate for your own well-being.
I love that. It's not just about blindly trusting the system.
It's about being an active participant in your own healthcare.
This has been such a fascinating journey into the world of packaging and labeling controls. But before we wrap up, I'm curious, is there anything out there beyond these regulations that's kind of pushing the boundaries of how we think about medication safety?
That's a great question, and it leads us into some really exciting territory. Subpart G is like the foundation.
The essential rules everyone has to follow.
Right, but the world of pharmaceuticals is always innovating.
So what's next?
Well, what if we could go beyond those physical labels? What if we could use technology to give patients even more information and control?
Okay, now you've got my attention. What are we talking about here? Are we talking about, like, microchips in our pills?
Not quite, but we're getting close. Imagine scanning your medication bottle with your phone
Okay.
and instantly getting access to all sorts of information tailored just for you.
Like what kind of information?
Interactive tutorials, dosage reminders, warnings about potential interactions with other medications you might be taking.
You could even message your doctor directly through the app.
It's like having a personalized pharmacist right in your pocket.
That sounds amazing.
And it's not just about convenience. Imagine if your medication bottle could actually track whether you're taking your medication as prescribed.
Send you alerts if you miss a dose.
Or even adjust the dosage based on how your body is responding.
That sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
It does, but some of these technologies are already being developed.
Wow, so the future of medication safety could be even more personalized and responsive than it is now?
And think about how that could transform how we manage chronic conditions.
This deep dive has taken us from the fine print of regulations to the cutting edge of what's possible.
It's been quite a journey.
Okay, so one last question before we move on.
Sure.
We've talked a lot about the FDA and the companies that make these medications, but where do pharmacists fit into all of this?
That's a really important question because pharmacists are often the ones on the front lines.
They're the ones actually dispensing those medications to patients.
And they play a vital role in ensuring that patients understand how to take their medications safely and effectively.
So they're not just filling prescriptions, they're educators too.
Absolutely. And they're also advocates for their patients. They're trained to spot potential problems like drug interactions or incorrect dosages.
And they can step in and intervene if they see something that doesn't seem right.
They're a critical part of the whole system, working to make sure that the right medication gets to the right person in the right way.
Okay, so next time I'm at the pharmacy, I'm going to look at my pharmacist with a whole new level of respect.
They really are unsung heroes in the world of medication safety.
We've talked about the regulations, the FDA's role, those consequences when things go wrong.
Right, those enforcement actions, the recalls.
But I'm kind of curious about the flip side of that.
Okay, yeah.
How do companies actually make sure they're meeting all these standards in the first place?
It's one thing to have the rules written down, but putting them into practice every single day, that's a whole other challenge.
It's got to be more than just being really organized.
It is. It's where the idea of quality systems comes in.
Quality systems? What does that even mean?
Well, it's a framework, a really comprehensive one.
It covers everything.
Pretty much. Every aspect of how a company operates, from their big picture strategy down to the smallest details,
And the goal is?
to ensure product quality and, of course, patient safety.
So it's like their internal rule book.
That's a good way to put it. And one of the foundations of a good quality system is documentation.
Documentation, like all those batch records we talked about.
Exactly. And so much more. It's about creating a system where everything is traceable, accountable.
So if something does go wrong, they can go back and figure out exactly what happened.
Right. And good documentation goes way beyond just those batch records. Companies need detailed standard operating procedures for absolutely everything.
Right, standard operating procedures, that's a mouthful.
You can call them SOPs. Think of them as step-by-step instructions for every single task.
Like how to clean a piece of equipment.
Or how to verify a label, how to store materials, how to handle a deviation, everything.
Wow, so there's a lot of paperwork involved.
There can be, but it's not about bureaucracy for its own sake. It's about ensuring consistency, reducing the chance of human error.
And those SOPs, they're not just written once and then forgotten about, right?
No, they're living documents. They need to be reviewed regularly, updated to reflect new information or best practices.
So it's a system that's constantly evolving.
To try to make things better, safer. And it's not enough just to have those SOPs. You have to make sure people are actually following them.
So that means training.
Thorough training for every employee, and then systems to monitor whether they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Like regular audits.
Exactly. Spot checks, internal reviews, sometimes even bringing in third-party auditors to get a fresh perspective.
It's like checking your own homework, but with really high stakes.
That's a good way to put it. Maintaining a strong quality system takes constant vigilance, always looking for ways to improve.
And if they find problems, they need a way to address them, right?
Absolutely. That's where KPA comes in, corrective and preventative actions.
So more acronyms.
It's the process of figuring out why something went wrong and then putting measures in place to make sure it doesn't happen again.
It's not just fixing the mistake. It's preventing it from happening in the first place.
Exactly. A good KPA system is all about continuous improvement, learning from those mistakes and making the system stronger.
It sounds like creating this culture of quality where everyone understands that patient safety is their responsibility.
That's really the heart of it, making quality a core value, something that's embedded in every decision, every process.
And what about technology? Does that play a role in all of this?
Oh, absolutely. Technology is becoming more and more important in managing quality systems.
So we're not just talking about robots on the assembly line.
Not just that, although automation is definitely a part of it. But we're also talking about things like electronic batch records, systems that can analyze huge amounts of data in real time.
Even artificial intelligence that can help predict potential problems before they happen.
It's pretty incredible stuff. Technology is giving companies a level of insight into their operations that they've never had before.
So they can spot trends, identify areas for improvement.
Make decisions based on data, not just gut feeling.
It's a whole different way of thinking about quality.
More proactive, more data-driven, and ultimately, I think, leading to safer medications.
This has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about this world of packaging and labeling controls.
It's been a pleasure talking about it.
We've covered so much: the regulations themselves, the FDA's role, those quality systems companies have in place, the role of technology.
And through it all, the focus has always been on that end goal, protecting patients.
Making sure that when you reach for that bottle of medicine, you can trust that it's safe and effective.
It's a huge responsibility, and one that everyone in the pharmaceutical industry takes seriously.
To all our listeners out there, next time you open that medicine cabinet, take a moment to think about all the people who work to make sure the medication is safe.
All the systems, the checks and balances, the constant striving for improvement.
It's really quite remarkable.
It is. So stay curious, keep learning, and never hesitate to ask questions about your health.
Because knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your well-being.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.